Welcome to English Stories Academy.
The Clockmaker's Secret. Part 1. The Silent Clock. In the heart of a misty valley surrounded by towering mountains, there stood a peculiar little town named Eldermere. The town was famous not for its farms or markets, but for its towering clock tower that had stood for 200 years. The clock was massive and golden, its hands frozen at 11:11 for over a century. People called it the silent clock. The elders told stories about how the clock stopped ticking the night the stars vanished from the sky for a brief moment. They whispered that the clock was cursed, warning children to stay away. But Clara, a curious and clever 12-year-old girl, was never one to listen to old wives' tales. Clara lived with her grandfather, Mr. Hemsworth, the town's clockmaker. His shop was a magical place filled with ticking clocks, strange blueprints, and shiny brass gears. Clara spent her afternoons there, helping him repair clocks while dreaming of becoming an inventor herself. One rainy afternoon, Clara was dusting the shelves when she noticed her grandfather hunched over an old wooden box engraved with strange symbols. His brows were furrowed, and he seemed deep in thought. "What's that, Grandpa?" Clara asked, setting down a clock she was polishing. Mr. Hemsworth looked up, startled. "Oh, this?" He hesitated, then sighed. "It's part of an old mystery, Clara. A piece of the silent clock. People have searched for answers for decades, but no one has ever solved it." Clara's eyes lit up. A mystery? What kind of mystery? Her grandfather pulled out an ancient journal and opened it to a faded sketch of the clock tower. The clock was built by Elias Gray, a genius clockmaker who vanished without a trace. Legend says he created something extraordinary, a machine that could manipulate time. But before he could reveal his invention, the clock stopped and he disappeared. Clara's heart raced. A machine that can control time? Why hasn't anyone found it? "Because Elias hid it," Mr. Hemsworth said. "Only someone clever enough to understand his work could uncover the truth." Clara couldn't sleep that night. Her mind buzzed with thoughts of Elias Gray and his time machine. As the moonlight spilled into her room, she made a decision. She had to investigate the clock tower herself. Part 2. The First Clues. At midnight, Clara grabbed her flashlight and sketchbook and sneaked out of the house. The town was eerily silent, the cobblestone streets glistening with rain. When she reached the clock tower, she hesitated. The iron doors were enormous, rusted, and covered in ivy. She pushed them open with a creak and stepped inside. The air was damp, and the faint scent of oil and wood filled her nose. She shone her flashlight around, revealing towering gears, chains, and a spiral staircase that seemed to stretch into the clouds. Climbing the staircase, Clara noticed carvings on the walls, constellations, symbols, and words in a language she didn't recognize. She sketched them in her notebook. When she reached the top, she found herself in a circular room with a golden clock face. In the center of the clock face was a keyhole surrounded by intricate symbols, the same symbols on her grandfather's wooden box. Clara's hands trembled as she pulled the box from her bag and found a hidden key inside. As she inserted the key into the keyhole, the room shuddered. The gears sprang to life, spinning faster than Clara had ever seen. The golden hands on the clock began to move, but backward. Suddenly, the floor beneath her vanished, and Clara was pulled into a swirling vortex of light and shadow. Part 3: A Journey Through Time. When Clara opened her eyes, she was no longer in Eldermere. She stood in a bustling city filled with cobblestone streets, gas lamps, and people dressed in clothes from centuries ago. "Where am I?" she whispered. Before she could gather her thoughts, a boy about her age ran up to her, his face filled with relief. "You're Clara, right? Elias said you'd come." Clara blinked. "Elias? Elias Gray?" The boy nodded. "He's waiting for you. Come on." He led Clara through the streets to a hidden workshop. Inside, Clara met a man with kind eyes and a silver pocket watch dangling from his vest. "Elias Gray," he introduced himself, bowing slightly. Clara stared in awe. "You're alive. Everyone thought you disappeared." Elias smiled. "I didn't disappear. I was trapped, caught between moments in time when my invention malfunctioned." He explained that his time machine, hidden within the clock tower, had torn the fabric of time itself. Now, moments from the past, present, and future were colliding. "Only you can help me fix it," Elias said. "Your creativity and your grandfather's skills are the key." Part 4: Facing the Shadow. As Clara and Elias worked together, deciphering riddles and repairing parts of the machine, they discovered they weren't alone. A shadowy figure had been following them, a time thief who wanted to use the machine for his own gain. One night, the thief confronted them, demanding the machine's secrets. Clara used her quick thinking to trick him, leading him into a trap set by Elias. But the encounter left Clara shaken. "Why me?" she asked Elias. "I'm just a kid." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes the most extraordinary things are done by the most ordinary people. Trust yourself." Part 5: Restoring Time. With the final piece of the machine in place, Clara and Elias activated it. The gears turned, the clock chimed, and a brilliant light filled the workshop. As the timeline was restored, Clara found herself back in Eldermere. The silent clock was no longer silent. It ticked beautifully, its golden hands moving gracefully. The townspeople were amazed, but only Clara and her grandfather knew the truth. Years later, Clara became the town's most famous inventor, creating wonders that inspired generations. But every time the clock struck 12, she looked at it and smiled, remembering the adventure that changed her life.
Like, share, and subscribe to our channel.